I guess that brings me to why I wanted to have you on the show. I know we had an awesome pre-chat here, but I do want to introduce today's guest.
We went straight into it.
Yeah, I know. It was awesome.
I reckon we'd be here for 3 or 4 hours if we didn't
Joe
do that.
Rogan special.
Yeah.
But we've got Brad McDonnell on the show today, and we connected through your company. We connected on Instagram, which is one of the great reasons why I love social media. You literally have access to pretty much anyone on the planet. And I love what you're about. And you've constantly, I think it's been over 2 years you've been checking in and supporting and throwing, I guess, when I say good vibes, like you've always been encouraging. And this is from a bloke who technically doesn't know me from a bar of soap, right? Which is, I love, and I think we need more of. And I've watched your journey as you've continued to grow and evolve. And then we caught up for a coffee a couple of weeks ago here. And as we just said, we could have talked for hours. And I wanted to come on and talk to you about what you're doing. There's a number of reasons why I'm very intrigued and inspired by what you're doing. One, your ability to network is something that just makes my jaw drop. Like I just want to continue developing that skill, and I think it's a skill that would transform so many people's lives. It's almost like an AI in and of itself. It's just so valuable to have a great network. The mission that you found yourself on with your business, what you guys are achieving, and just the growth that you're having, and the people that you have backing what you do is phenomenal, and we'll dive into that as well. And your ability to just get around and champion people. I know I've probably spoken about it a lot on this podcast, that my experience in America is people are always championing you and they want you to succeed, which is, it feels kind of odd. And I know you might have that same feeling, and you come back home and people want you to succeed, but as soon as you do, they're like sitting there with the cricket bat ready to just hit you in the shins and bring you back down. And you're like, I don't know what you want from me. Like, do you want me to do well, or do you want me to sit down here with you? So the fact that you're in Australia, surrounded by that, but you're still championing people is something that I admire and I aspire to continue doing. But firstly, thanks for coming on the show, giving me some of your time, especially during the Black Friday craziness.
Yeah, it is crazy, but yeah, no, it's great to be here.
Mate, how are things going for you? Give us a bit of a rundown. I had a question that I wanted to dive into that I hope would kick us off and give people a bit of an overview of you. But obviously your journey spans continents, from growing up in New Zealand to playing rugby in the UK and now building a wellness empire. If you had to pick one pivotal moment that shaped your drive to create Manna Vitality, what would it be and why?
Oh, that's a big question.
That is huge. We're going there.
It was straight off. Well, it all started with the question that nothing really made sense to me, and I can elaborate on that, because when I had the most incredible job, and I've spoken about this on podcasts before. It's like I had it all set up, living in Brisbane, had the condo, had copious amounts of money, had an amazing partner, but I just wasn't happy. And it wasn't the fact that I wasn't happy, I just wasn't fulfilled.
Yep.
And there was something that was nagging in the background that I just had a deeper question. And my business partner and best mate of 30 years now, he was out doing all of these amazing things. He was in the Himalayas, and he was in Egypt, and I've gone, oh, there's something there.
Yep.
There's something there that triggered that sort of nomad style of me. And I just wasn't settled in the way that I felt I should have been at that stage. I was, about to get engaged and have kids and all that. And it just, something inside of me said just a big no. So the reason why Manna come about was the fact that David and I basically renounced everything and just travelled around the world, and then went on a journey, and we just come up with the idea of, what would be one product that we would love to sell that would represent those deeper questions and the truth. And that's what we now call like true science. It's like, it's the bridge between all of that ancient technology and antiquity and all of those, esoteric and Eastern philosophies with like the data-driven science. So basically your cellular health, like things like fulvic acid and how does a cell work, and how does the body function. So basically I just gave myself a the gift of like renouncing everything, going on a journey. I wouldn't recommend it to everyone that's got responsibilities because it's totally irresponsible.
Yep.
And my family thought I was mad, and I started walking around with no shoes on, all the stereotypical things that you could imagine. All my mates thought I went crazy. I was doing CrossFit like twice a day. Was a CrossFit coach.
Yep.
While I was running like a national construction supply company. So I was doing all these things, and then I flipped the switch and just went completely the opposite way, because I couldn't drag myself. The feeling was so wild that I couldn't like function. Like it just nothing started making sense. And then I stopped and then went out to, I took a road trip with 3 mates out from Noosa all the way out to Uluru.
Oh, wow. That would have been incredible.
Yeah, it was like a peeling of the onion. Like all of these, because what was happening, it was like when you peel the onion, like all the space started happening, and all these emotions that I had never dealt with in life started coming out.
Yep.
Because there was nowhere to be, nothing to do, but just like drive in a straight line and stop where we felt. So it was that feeling aspect that I never actually got into before.
How did you manage, I guess, learning to accept that and feel that? It's something that so many people are uncomfortable with and we avoid. So if we are sort of starting to experience that, we'll pull out our phone and scroll Instagram or any other distraction. So for you going on that, firstly, were you aware that was sort of going to be the process? And secondly, like, how did you just, I guess, surrender to that?
Yeah, what happens, I feel like, in life where you're guided to those things and you almost get in the flow of them as they sort of drag you. Well, it's like the mind or the ego, whatever we like to call it, is sort of the resistance is there. I hated every single moment of it to start with because there's so much resistance because it wasn't natural. Like to your point, I was there with the phone and I was just like always, I had my laptop out always, and I had this thought when I was out doing it. It's like I was always checking my phone. I wasn't working anymore because my phone used to ring all the time. I was getting emails all the time. I was like, oh shit! Like and that's where those incremental space started to happen. Whereas that was replaced by feeling and emotions. So there's all this energy sort of moving around my body, which I didn't understand what it was. And it was either like fear or it was like anger or it was, all the emotions that come up from then. And I didn't know how to sort of deal with it. But I was so fortunate and guided that the guys I was with, the brothers I was with, they were super versed in that.
Yep.
And there was a secret on the way out that we did is one of the guys, and it's the book by Robert Lawler, Voices of the First Day. So it was an incredible book that he'd written studying Aboriginal and Indigenous cultures, like basically initiation processes. And before we knew it, I was on my own initiation process going out to Uluru. And that was like so profound in the way where it just cracked me open. And I was actually having like these physical reactions where I was actually having these blisters coming out all over my body. It was the weirdest experience. Never had them again. But it was just almost like I was purging some sense of life.
Yep.
And that whole experience was profound all the way out. And then we got out and we basically didn't know what we were staying in Uluru. We had a tent. It was freezing. It was like in the middle of May or something like that. And it was crazy. So we'd leave the tent during the day in like between the industrial area of Uluru and where all the hotels and stuff are. And you weren't allowed to camp there, but we did anyway. and then we'd go around and explore during the day and come back. And we had this note on the tent saying that if you don't move the tent by the rangers, you'd get kicked out. So we luckily, one of the guys I was with actually knew one of the elders who's passed now. I won't say his name, just out of due respect. And we actually stayed at his place.
Yep.
And he was like the traditional owner of that whole area.
Wow. What was that like, getting to spend time with the traditional owner?
Oh, it was crazy. It was crazy because it was a mix of like deeply seeing what Western culture had done to Indigenous. It was brutal.
Yeah. It
was brutal in a lot of ways, but beautiful in others. And the experience I had with this gentleman was I had like, I'm not too sure if you're familiar with Uluru, but you've got Uluru on the left and you've got Kurujura, which is like all the the other rangers just beside it, and it was on dusk, and I was out there by myself at his property, at his house, and there was a fire going, and everyone was inside or just out the front. And I was just standing there for like 20 minutes just going, oh, how like amazing is this? And it was the first sort of inkling of what gratitude felt like. I actually had, you know, how everyone talks about gratitude. It was the actual first time I could actually feel, like viscerally feeling gratitude and just going, oh, just relaxing into that gratitude. And then out of nowhere, this gentleman just sort of popped up beside me. It was like a ghost had sort of come up beside me. And I was standing there, and he was just like, just talking in his language, and he just, basically I could understand the fact that he was pointing to that tree is me, that's my ancestor, and this and that. And it was just like, oh no, all of this is related, but he was so heavily invested in Jesus and religion and that element as well. So there was a lot of Western culture tied up in religion and stuff like that. But that experience had taught me, oh, everything's connected. Mm-hmm. And that was a lasting experience, that nature in the essence, or in my eyes, is the most incredible thing that God's created, or is God. So, and that's what I talk about with faith. It's like faith is all of the encompassing parts of nature. Because without it, it's an imperfect design. So yeah, those inspirations kept coming back, and why I've mentioned nature and God, as those two things have been the cornerstone of what Manna's about, and the most incredible ingredients that we've got have all come from the most pristine places on the planet, but there's such a beautiful creation of what God is. And what with Manna's more of a movement in that sort of health and beauty space. But what it is, we're more in servitude and in service and just like caretakers for that. So that's why it's become such a movement in itself, and that's why it's been such an incredible experience. And from that experience, I went into Vipassana. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, Vipassana for sure. It's the one thing that's been on my bucket list. Like one of my closest mates, Etienne, who I played rugby with in France, he's done a number of them. Did one in India. He came to Australia, did the one up the Sunshine Coast, and I've always just hearing his stories. It's something that I've wanted to do, but I've never, committed to. I guess. What was your experience like?
Yeah, that's another experience that sort of shaped the roots, and all of these things are really good points, because it's interesting talking about them now. It's like they were like the cornerstones or the pillars of building sort of Manna, and that's what the momentum, and that's what we always keep coming back to is like there's an element of all of these experiences is built up to what Manna is now, and they're not from us. We were just experiencing them or in the flow of them. And that's one thing we've got as one of our core values, is like everything comes from that, which is nature and which is God. So that's almost our number one. Our number one value is that, like, we're just stewards of what's been provided on an infinite level. And that's quite deep, but...
No, I think to some degree we all are, whether we choose to accept that or not. One thing I've learnt from my mum, she grew up on a farm, and obviously but I went to a school where a lot of the boys were country lads, and so you grow up and you're like, I want to go shooting, I want to kill stuff, and for whatever reason, and it was fun for a while, and now that I'm older, I don't so much want to kill stuff, because I've started to appreciate how everything is connected, and I've gone into more, I've gone down the rabbit hole of watching just like YouTubes on like ecological hunting, where it's like if you're going to hunt something, you're going to use every piece of that or like bleed it back into the soil, which will help the soil quality to provide and grow more stuff. And so my whole mindset around that shift, and my mum's been telling me that for as long as I can remember, because she's loves her animals. So to now then start hearing you talk about that, I do believe we're all just a product of what's in front of us. It's just whether we're choosing to see that and take responsibility for the things that are in front of us, and how we choose to utilize those to make the place better.
Yeah, it's a great analogy, and it's almost like coming back to Vipassana, because that's one of the cornerstones of that is, it's almost a vegetarian, vegan diet through that whole process. So yeah, you can't eat meat. You can't. I think you can drink coffees and teas now. I think we're one of our guys. Everyone in our team have done it at least once.
Did you do a 3-day, 7 or 10?
I did 10. The 10 was brutal because it was straight after I got from. So it was almost like I love pain. Like pain has been my greatest teacher and always will be the greatest teacher. And I think it's imperative for men to always embrace pain.
I agree.
And find it, because society now is built so heavily on comfort. And there's so much abundance in between those two things if you put your attention on doing hard things as a man.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that's really, because we can go into a lot of concepts about God and flow and all those, and they're really like a real feminine aspect of, but I'm really focused on like training every day, jiu-jitsu every day, and doing the hard things is really important. I know that's something that you champion too, and it's really, really important. And it's like work. I just want to work, train, and be the best partner I can to my partner, and that's it. And that's really the only things that I really put all of my attention on, and that comes from doing things like Vipassana. And Vipassana is such a funny one. When it's your time, it'll appear.
Yep.
And it'll be really loud, and that's what happened. I got back and I said, I've got to do Vipassana, and then a seat come available, and it was like, okay, yeah, I've got to go. So I went there, and it was the most so being to Uluru, it was such a cool experience with my 3 brothers. That was awesome. And then going to Vipassana almost like a week after that, it was brutal, man. I've never cried so much about just anything, like anything and everything come up. And there's this one thing they talk about often is like they call them sankharas. And my interpretation of what the sankharas is little trauma or little like crystals that have been caught in the body, mm-hmm. or trauma. I hate using the word trauma, but they've been caught in the body over years and years of build up. And when you've given yourself that time and space, those things percolate and come to the surface and need to get out in some way through like it's like a physiological reaction of burping, super uncomfortable. Like you're sitting in the same spot sometimes for 2 hours. The pain of my knees and my hips was, I feel that pain in the hips and like seeing past the pain and actually not being the pain. I know it sounds a bit wanky, but it's like you actually burst through the pain. And I had an abscess. I felt like it was an abscess, but it was just this massive ulcer that came out of my mouth as well. So all of these physical things were, it's like all of those things from Uluru. So it was like this great big purge for months and months. It was brutal. It just never stopped. So like I was just, because I'd been in so much pain emotionally and held so much down and was into drugs, into all the stuff, right?
All the stuff, yeah.
All the stuff. And to drop those stories and then to go the complete opposite extreme way. And that's how I realized the only way for myself has to be experiential. Someone could tell me all these stories, but it has to be experiential. And all the cornerstones of these events are all being experiential. And I feel like fundamentally for men, that's really important. It's like talk therapy, yeah, it's great, but you've got to actually experience the hurt and pain, because that's how I feel like God's designed us, is like to withstand the pain and to break through the pain is where all the beautiful magic is.
I couldn't agree more. And you talk about the physiological, I guess, release of whether it's stress, anger, resentment, guilt, whatever it is, like your body can bury that down. The fact that your body can make you so unconsciously aware that you've still got that much trauma in you just shows the power of the mind, for one. And when you talk about having this release, when I do a lot of breath work, and I remember having a guided experience, and I just remember shaking, and I felt this pain, like my ankles, my knees felt like they were just going to explode. And then the guide started putting his fingers on my sternum, trying to calm my body down. But I was just like the most insane amount of gratitude to want to tell all my family, because like all the guys there was 6 of us next to it. I'm like, as soon as I come out of this, I'm going to tell them all I love them and I'm really appreciative. And then when I came back, I was like, nah, I'm all good. But like
Yeah.
you go through all this, like it's just like watching your life from above, like all the things that you've done, and you see people in your life through their eyes as well, and it helps you shift the meaning of maybe resentment that you have towards people, because you can then have gratitude and empathy for them for potentially why they've treated you in a certain way, and it just helps you release all this shit that doesn't actually matter. And
the veil of the mind between the chemistry of the body and the physical aspect in the mind, like it's just profound. The breathwork side of things as well. I've had some incredible experience with breathwork, and we talk about it often. We mean the team at Manna is like the greatest intelligence or the greatest technology that's ever been created is the body. Is the human like God has created this perfect vessel, and it's just so much. There's so much in it, and all the like thousands and thousands of hours I've put attention on, like a lot of ancient text and, a lot of like the stuff that you shouldn't be reading, but you're reading. And it all points back to the human body is like and the Bible is a perfect map of the human body.
Yep.
It's like, if you look really deeply, everything in the physiology of the body maps out to everything in the body, in the Bible.
I'm yet to read the Bible, but since I've been in America, it's like, I'm like, I should read it to understand it, because everyone in America has read it. It feels like.
It's a journey to go on to, and I've talked about this often as well. There's a book called The Secret Teachers of All Ages, and I think I read that within, a week or 72 hours or something like that, by taking the products that we were playing around with. That was another experience.
Yep.
And it was just clear as day to me, and I could see that. And that's where, like, championing other people and just making everyone win, because I just want everyone to win. Like, I guess that's the upside to me, and the downside. Like, sometimes I want everyone to win when potentially they don't want to win themselves.
Yep.
So I've been really clear on always backing people and having an eye for people that are willing to go to that next level and to support that. And I think that's what we're here to do as well, is like, once we can see something and then, realize what our own gifts are, and just to like go all in on those gifts. And Naval Ravikant talks about that, right? Like, find out what you're super passionate about. And it's the opposite to what we're doing on a 9 to 5. And that's was my direct experience. I had a 9 to 5 that was just so noisy that didn't give me the ability to have the space to go into what I was actually really good at. There was glimpses, but I was probably in roles that I wasn't,
Yeah, and you're waiting for that. You're at the effect of other people giving you permission to do it. When you work for yourself, you can just do it.
Yeah.
Which is, or even just giving yourself the space. I find being in the city I love Brisbane. However, when I was over in Nashville, I have a lot more space to think, to focus on relationships that I really want to invest in and make decisions, because I feel like a lot of the decisions I'm making in Brisbane is saying no to people or saying no to things, because I'm very fortunate to have a lot of opportunity, and just the fact of taking time to say no to those things is draining me mentally. So having the freedom to think and explore new things, I feel like I've grown more in the last 12 months than I have in probably the last 5 years. Just like when I moved from Toowoomba to Brisbane, it was that same experience. And that's why I'm a big believer in changing locations also frees up space, or doing it's why I'm very interested in a Vipassana, because I'm like, if I can just sit and think, and fuck, it's terrifying. When you were talking about it before, I had this feeling in my chest where I'm like, I really want to do it. It excites me, but it scares the shit out of me. And I feel like it would just take my life to a whole new level and give it a whole new sense of meaning. But it hasn't been the time yet. Maybe. I don't know.
I don't think that like the time is never right to do that. Like, and that's where the beautiful thing about the mind, it's such a trickster, because it'll be clear on one aspect. There'll be like a felt feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's let's call it intuition to use some appropriate language. If we trust the intuition's always right, and that's usually a message from some like outside of ourselves, versus, oh, okay, I've got this booking, I've got this to do, I've got that to do. Oh no, we've got to travel and do this. It's like the moment I finished Vipassana, and on the last day, you get to like go down and talk to everyone, like after not talking to anyone for 10 days or looking at everyone. And I remember everyone rushed down to the shared area, and I rushed out to into the bush where I'd sat the same time every day. And I just sat there and I just burst out crying because it was the first time I could actually remember I did something for myself and that I was proud of myself. And that was like a profound moment. It was like, oh, how long have I been living a life that's for other people?
Mm.
And it's like that was the true meaning for me of actually like selflessly doing something for myself.
What changes did you make after that?
Oh, everything.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a moment where I cut everyone out. Like there was just a handful of people. I think we went to Tasmania after that. And when I say we, it was always David and I for years.
Yep.
And that's why the project, took off so quickly. We took off to Tassie. Just jumped on the road and we had a Prius. Two bearded, long-headed men. My beard was down to here, long hair, and we just jumped in a car and went to Tassie and just met all these incredible people in Tassie and lived down there for like 4 months.
Wow!
And just really fell in love with like the isolation of Tassie and the pure wildness.
Where does the courage come from to do that though? So. You have this essential rite of passage, and I'd love to come back and explore that more because I believe every bloke should be doing that. There's a lot of adult boys, not men. The second thing, you then have the next experience in the Vipassana, and then you're just out of here. So where does the courage to come? Because even people listen to the podcasts and maybe have a coffee with you and they feel so fucking inspired, right? And then they don't do anything. Why did you have the courage to change that, to do something about it?
Oh, two things. Oh, it was a huge level of irresponsibility. And the second thing, it was just always pain. Like that pain that I felt, I just knew that if I didn't do that I had to accept that melancholy or that pain was going to be something I had to live with. So that was something else that I feel like we can either and some people would have thought what I was doing was running away or not facing the demons that I needed to face. But like to what you were saying earlier, that sometimes getting out of that, like that geolocation of where you are shifts your own consciousness. And it's really important to see new things. I think it's really important for the mind to see that, like, let's see new things, to appreciate beauty and nature and art, and all of those things really change and shift your psyche. And I was just compelled, and it was just a yes. And that's what I lived by. Like unless it was a clear yes and everything opened up, like it was just really smooth and flowy. And that was the number one thing. It was like, I didn't see it as courage. I just thought that I'd never want to live like that again. And so I just chose a certain path, and that was, eating honey sandwiches and living off like 20 bucks a day.
Yep.
But it was a thing. I sold off a lot of things and had some cash, but I just had this thing where I'm going to live like basically off nothing and be resourceful. And it was just such an adventure. And it was like that inner child or that little boy was coming out and living.
Yep.
And just meeting some really cool people without just in that pure, I know it sounds a little bit weird, but it was just some of those people down in Tassie we met were just like so beautiful. And there was nothing that they wanted from us and we wanted from them. It was just, all we had to offer people was just sitting with people in presence. And they'd ask us, what are you doing? And we go, we don't know. And it's just so random,
Yeah.
right? And everyone's going like, oh, well, you got to be doing something. We said, well, not. Oh, we've got these things we're working on. And that's where we're in the like deep southwest of Tasmania. We're going on this like 15K walk. And 2 weeks before I left Tassie, I had a surfing accident down at Currumbin Alley on the Gold Coast. Nearly drowned. I got stuck underneath the rocks and punctured my heel.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I took the back exit to go out, or back entry to go out, and then I just mistimed it, and I got stuck on the rocks, and it was a moment where I thought, oh, yeah, no, I'm done. I almost, like, I gave up. I just relaxed. The body went, I'm fighting this, and I was trapped under this rock, and next minute I just got picked up, and then I got landed straight on this rock, and just, like, there was blood everywhere. It's like, oh, I've got scars all down the side of my legs from it. Yeah, that was an experience, and then we left to go to Tassie, and I just went, I just want deep rest and nurture.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of that popping up for me, and we went on this massive walk, and we've been tinkering, and David, my business partner, he's the alchemist, and he's discovered a lot of these products, and then we've just gone all in on them. And I just had this burning desire when we're away. I just said, we've got to, like, I was like 7Ks in this walk, in pain again, because I had this shoe on and my foot was bleeding, and it was just brutal because I had stitches in my feet.
Just continuing to trudge on.
Yeah. It was just like, but through that, from learning that at Vipassana, I just went, oh, yeah, there's something, yeah, we've got to do this. And we just went all in on it. And we just followed a path that it was just an experience after experience. And then we went to the US, because we had a mutual friend that in the US that was part of like metaphysics and quantum physics and stuff like that we'd had relationships with. Dave had a friendship with this guy that was just a world leader in quantum physics. And then one thing led to the other guy that was raising money for this guy who was making these bloody time warp machines. It was crazy. These machines that were basically like making free technology devices, right?
Yep.
Like cutting edge technologies. And we met, David met this guy years before, and he was raising money for investors and stuff like that. So that's how we got connected to this gentleman called Mark. And then Mark basically said, you guys have got a great idea with the products, which is, this fulvic acid shilajit product.
Yep.
We had the marine minerals product, which was Ormus. And his partner at the time was a lady called Dr. Beth, who's a business partner of ours now. And she's a leading functional medical doctor in cellular biology. So it was just a perfect mix, right? If we didn't follow all these, like all
steps, essentially. Like.
Yeah, if it was more me thinking about it from a logical step, it wouldn't have worked. That's why it's sort of just, if it was all yeses and green lights, we just kept going. And yeah, we got, Mark just said, here you go, here's some play money, go and do whatever you want to do. And I remember standing out the front of this place in Mill Valley, which is a suburb north of San Francisco, 20 minutes north of San Francisco. It was just like, that's all I ever wanted, because I was from the body and the physical and movement was such an obsession for me. And then we got investment in a supplement company. I just went, like, all of my dreams had come to reality. It was the most profound experience, and I just stood there and just went, like, Dave and I were hugging each other and just going, let's just go for it. Little do I know that, that's just the start, and all the hard work has to start.
Yep. And
there was a lot of stopping and starting with the business in different forms to what it is now. It was called Manna Energy back then. Then basically, we ran out of money, same sort of thing.
Talk to us about that. Well, I've got it imprinted in my mind to talk about the rite of passage. I know we'll come back to that, but while we're here, I'd love to talk into the business stuff, because I find it fascinating what you've created, and I'd love to hear some more of those challenges, like running out of money and what that's been like, because quite often people don't hear the shitstorm behind the scenes of what it actually takes to get to where you've gotten to.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like you've got to fail so many times and keep. Potentially, some other people don't fail and they make it first go. But I just don't think there's not enough lessons in that.
Yep.
And I feel like sooner or later you'll trip up on something, and it'll be at such a stage where it'll just be it'll be a full deck just getting washed out. We've learned a lot of really hard, valuable lessons early to really set us up at this stage of the business. And a lot of them early were just audience.
Yep.
We didn't build an audience. We built an incredible product that had no one to sell to. And and the reason why that failed now in hindsight was the fact that I'd been so heavily involved in sales and marketing in a traditional sense. And then that whole digital marketing space was so foreign to both David and I.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in the medical space. He was a sales rep for one of the biggest medical businesses in the world, Stryker and Olympus. And he was building like medical device rooms and stuff in a lot of theatres and stuff. And
it's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy. So he's seen the direct opposite side. And then we got this whole digital space. So we had all these products, and it was like, oh, now we've got to sell. And I could barely open a laptop at this stage.
Yep.
Because I totally just like tapped out of that. And it was almost that re-entry, and life happened, and we both basically, so we would put it on hold for a while we actually survived, because we couldn't survive.
Yep.
So basically, that just got shelved. We always had attention on putting it on there. And then, a few years back, we just went, we've got to really put attention on it. And then, sort of COVID happened, and a few of those things happened as well. But just learning the aspect of a different discipline of attention and digital marketing and those sort of currencies were just profound. And the business element of that was very, very brutal. And basically, we realised that specifically the Shilajit product was too early in Australia back 4 years ago. So we made an intention, because we had support in the US and we had a network already built up through Dr. Beth in the US and with Mark in the US, and we had access to some incredible people as well. That was the cornerstone of saying, no, we're not going to put all of our energy and attention into Australia.
Yep.
We're really going to make sure to give the US a go. And we didn't know what we were doing. And we had a fairly reasonable sort of contracting team working for us, and no one could crack the code of attention. And that was in that, paid marketing space and Facebook. I feel like it's a lot easier now, and there's a lot more information, but we didn't know what we were doing. So basically, one day I just went, nah. And then Russell Bronson, through ClickFunnels, he's pretty famous in that digital marketing space. I just started devouring his stuff. I said, no, I'm gonna make this work. And I put hundreds and hundreds of hours of attention on, okay, that is our problem. We cannot sell. We had like $1.5 million worth of stock sitting there.
It's a big problem to have, not being able to move it on.
And I think we were only doing like $10,000 a month. And then I went, well, this is not sustainable, right? So the whole thing has to be sustainable, because we've got commitments with, like our team and stuff like that. So I got obsessed. And that's one thing that David and I talk about often is, finding people that are obsessed and geniuses at what they do is crucial to the success of anything. And that's what we sort of harbored, was like, okay, we've got to find the right people. And that Russell Bronson said, you've got to be on Instagram. And I spend so much time on Instagram championing people.
Yep.
But it was at the reason why what I did is I made a list of 100 people. So it was always like, your Joe Rogans, Human wasn't around then, your Tim Ferriss. So I just started writing down all these names, and just said, and then there was a guy called Josh Trent on this list of the top 100, and he had Wellness and Wisdom was his podcast, and I thought the guy was great. I had a lot of respect for him. And then we had this one of our contractors in our team. She was outreaching podcasts. I didn't even know what that meant. Like, I didn't understand it.
So good.
It was just so. We just sort of were faking it before we make it, and then we're basically, before like influencer marketing was around, we were just sending products out to willy nilly. I was just reaching out to people on Instagram.
Yep.
And that's what I did. I basically sent this box to this lady called Erin. And Erin was basically our influencer marketer. She goes, oh, I've got to send it to this Josh Trent. And I went, oh, he's on my list. So I was sharing.
She's like, what's your list?
Yeah, she's going, what's this list? So I sent her this list and I said, if you can get us on any of these podcasts, I didn't even know what that meant. Like hadn't done anything. So why would this dude who's doing really, really well be on this podcast? And we sent the product to him and he sent me a message like almost the next day once we got it to him. And he goes, oh, this product, he said this product's going to crush. And then Aaron was going, oh, this product's going to crush. And we've gone, what do you mean? Like, we didn't even know.
Yeah. What's the lingo?
And we talk about it often. It's like everyone in the US just wants you to win. And that's what's been contagious for me. That's what I want now. I actually want everyone to win.
Yep.
Like, I think we don't look at anyone in our businesses or any other competitors as competitors because they're not.
It's funny you say that, right? And I know you asked me outside, like, who's your sponsor for this? And some of the sponsors that I've got have been brilliant, but then there's been other companies that have just been like, nah, you've already got this, they're competition. And I'm thinking to myself, I can understand that, but if we all elevate each other and grow that specific sector of the industry, the pie becomes bigger. And some people may resonate more with your business than they do the other business anyway. So you're just exposing yourself to a larger audience. I think that's what you do really well. And I've taken that on from you. I even now will spend 30 minutes a day, which seems like a lot, but a lot of my business is on Instagram, just going through and supporting people's content because I know how fucking good I feel when someone comments on my post. So for me to actually watch it or read it and then not just thumbs up, it's like write something meaningful. I hope that it feels as good for them as it does when people do that to me because it's the go-giver, right? If you've ever read that book by Bob Berg, The Law of Circulation, like treat others how you want to be treated or give to others as you would love in return. And that's what I believe in. I lost my way for a number of years because I was so focused on me and my business that I stopped championing other people. And you reminded me of that. And so thank you for that. But it's now cool to be back in that space because I'm like, maybe they are competition, but I don't care. If they win, we all win. Like, it's going to grow.
Yeah, it's a really valuable point, and thank you, because that's it's a currency or an energy, and that's what's behind Manna. And that's like, and for example, like Dave and I are in our Instagram, like our business Instagram, talking to people like potentially all day, like for 5 minutes a year. So it'd probably be half an hour a day.
Yep.
We're in there like really communicating people, just sending love. And even now, like people are blown away because a lot of people get social media managers and it's like customer service teams. And we've got customer service teams that handle a lot of stuff that are the function of the business. But we're really, and Dave as the visionary of the business and myself as the COO and Dave's the CEO, we're basically in there all the time leading that way.
Yep. Because
we believe that that's a definite currency. And it's interesting you say that as well because we do that with our contractors. They love working with us because we treat them like family and we're not actually telling them what to do. And we're saying, hey, we've got you guys because you guys are geniuses of what you do. Like, just have the freedom. We've had some beautiful chats with our contractors and our paid media team and our retention team, and they just say, oh, thank you for letting us have the space to create our magic. And that's like, that will be the thing for me. It's not the money, it's not the status or, how big the brand gets. That's not important to us. It's a byproduct of that other side of, putting attention on the relationship side. Mm-hmm. And we've been really careful with our team as well. Like, if we feel and we can sense in the meetings, like I know every meeting that happens within our business, like all of our meetings are all done by that Fireflies and AI.
Yep.
So I scan every meeting that happens every day.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And what I do, if I can see an energy shift and we're straight onto it and it's like, no, like can't, like give them the space, like don't tell them what to do, because that's not the energy that we want in this movement. And I guess that's a value that we keep within the business. And it's really, really important for us. And that's something we act on as well. And I just love getting on, and just supporting other people. And I feel like what Manna's done for me is brought more of that what makes me feel good too.
Mm.
And I feel like that's a natural aspect to me. I'm not like in there, oh, it's a chore, like to your point, put in there 30, 40 minutes a day. No, I'm like, I can't wait to get out of bed, put my feet on the ground, and just the first thing I say to myself is like, oh, just I'm so grateful for where I'm at right now.
Yep.
And that's like, I don't do gratitude journals or sit there and write the top thing. It's not the space I'm in right now.
Yep.
It's a season I'm in where I put my feet on the ground and go, yep, I'm blessed to be here. Get to that coffee shop down, shout out to the boys at Salt, the people at Salt.
How good are they?
That's the best coffee.
Yeah, they put the best chocolate on my cappuccino. It's just like shaved Cadbury. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I basically get there when they open, and I just go, I'm just in my phone just going, okay, what's coming at me? Because we've got 5 full-time staff and 26 contractors.
Gee whiz.
So all of that's coming
awesome.
in, and with customers, and, maintaining relationships, not maintaining is like giving value to those relationships. And that's what I love, is just giving more value to those relationships. And that's the leverage point that I feel like networking's missed. It's like, I know people talk about give, but like actually true value instead of just being like, it's loaded value.
For sure.
There's a difference there as well. And that's what I find that works really, really well for us, because it becomes really natural and it's authentic.
Yep.
And that's why a lot of Australians do well in the US, because there's a level of authenticity that happens without, and what the really successful people in Australia, from Australia to the US do, is they drop the small poppy syndrome.
Yep.
And they replace that by like, I just want everyone to win as well. And then you slot into that currency.
Yep.
And that energy and that flow. And that's where I think it's really valuable. And that's why we've been supported and, perceived as being successful in that way there as well.
Definitely. What would you say your zone of genius is? I know you said you're the COO and there's so many things happening in your business, but is there like one area or one thing that you just I know you said you get lit up by the messages and all that, but is there anything that stands out to you that you're like, I could just do this all day, every day, and that's where you add the most value to the business?
Yeah, operations, like being an operator and like being that central place where everything comes to.
Yep.
For me, it's like understanding human nature as well. Like I can actually, so the way we look at, Dave can see numbers and I can see the psychology.
Emotions.
Yeah, I can see the psychology and the human nature of everything. So those are two great cornerstones for the brand as well. And then be in the weeds from an operational sense, like if we've got customer service issues or, we've got a manufacturing issue. So all across all the 10 divisions that we've got, I can be so obsessed and be in those and not worry about the other ones, but then zoom out and do that 10,000 feet view of the whole business and realize that if I'm so obsessed there, okay, and then intuitively see that if I make this choice, is it going to impact the whole system? And I'm a very systems orientated thinker as well. So it's almost like I look at things in like almost 3 buckets.
Yep.
So I'm not doing, in each division, I've got no more than 3 projects going on at the time.
It's cool that you can do that, because a lot of the pushback that I would get from blokes that I work with is I'm too analytical to be able to get emotional, but you've just shared probably the first 15 minutes we were talking about how you learn to lean into your emotions, that rite of passage experience. But then from when you're managing your business and probably other areas of your life, there is systems, there is processes that allow you to do that. So for anyone who sits there and says, I'm too analytical to tune in or to allow myself to feel, or I have to have a process of understanding, it's like, it is okay. And there is a possibility for you to just let go and be, and there's value that will come into your life as a result of that. But there is also value that comes through systems and data and processes as well. It's like learning to, I guess, dance with them when you need them within your life. Because for me, if I wanted to simplify life for anyone, we all have this idea of living a great life, living a fulfilling life. You may understand what fulfills you, you may not. The only way you're going to figure it out is by trying new things and just understanding that less is more in a lot of the things that you're doing. And I think the reason why a lot of men in particular aren't doing that is because they are still boys. They react to everything. They're emotionally not aware. They're emotionally immature. And because of that, they turn to vices like drugs, alcohol, pornography, and they may see success in career because that's where most people spend a minimum of 8 hours a day. Of course, you're going to succeed or make some kind of progress in an area where you spend the most time. But as a byproduct, the dominoes are falling in other areas in a negative way. Your relationships are falling down. You don't understand who you are, or you don't have any hobbies. Your friendship circle sucks and your self-esteem is done. So the rite of passage is something that I wanted to go back to because I think that is when a boy becomes a man. And I think a lot of women out there, especially, or just people in general who are dating men, are wanting strong men, people who can provide, who bring certainty and security into their life. So for you, talking about your essentially a rite of passage with your group of brothers, what would be some things from that moment? I know we loosely touched on it, but if there were things that would jump out at you from that made that such a powerful event or experience, what would that be that potentially listeners could look to, I guess, create their own rite of passage?
Yeah, brilliant question. I think the disclaimer that I'll start with is like, I have been all of those things that you just discussed.
So have I, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so I think I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm a perfect human. And I think what I come to with that is, I think Jung talks about it, Carl Jung, is like we can't see our own shadow. And I think fundamentally understanding that like statement is really, really important, is because the ability to see others in a light that's their shadow projecting at you, it's insane that then I can't see mine. And I think that has been a really valuable lesson through even this project, in senses like I can understand human nature, but there's other things that come up for me that are the same consistent things. And I think from initiation process is the ability to self-reflect. I think that's the biggest gift behind initiation. And I think it's one of those things that having the ability to self-reflect doesn't mean that you're not going to have the same issues or problems. You're actually going to have them constantly over. I just see, I call it the vortex of mirrors, and each mirror has the same problem that you've had for however long you've been alive, because that's what you've been programmed with through experiences and nature, nurture, whatever. So I feel like mine are, when they come up, I'm quicker to jump on them and to give them love or nurture and look at why they're popping up. And it's my reaction to, and it's all to do with the reflection in partnerships and relationships. So whatever relationship, be it with David, in the sense of working in a brotherhood, to my friends, and if I had to self-reflect on and reflect over every relationship that's failed, it's always been the same things for me. And it's almost like those are the little clues that I need to go and look at. But it's only, that self-reflection has only come from giving myself the time and space to actually have the opportunity to understand that. And that's through reading, it's through experiences, it's through obsession of like human nature, and understanding that we've got a physiology that reacts in a certain way to certain experiences. And I think initiation, and that's why I love the indigenous cultures, they did the precipice of moving a boy to a man, and there was a delineation really clearly. I feel like I never had that experience, and I think initiation can come in so many different forms. And I know you've played rugby, and I've had so many different initiations through that period. I don't think a lot of them were healthy.
I'm just laughing to myself about some of the initiations I had.
And I know that those initiations wouldn't cut it these days. They would just be, they'd be brutal. They'd be brutal. But I feel like as a man, to be able to embrace that opportunity to self-reflect And I even look at it, that's why I do jiu-jitsu every day, or five or 6 days a week, because I know that the same things are going to come up in that experience when I'm under pressure, I'm fatigued, and, you know, like I've got some, you know, 17-year-old kid that's 60 kilos tying me up like a pretzel. And it's but it's the same reactions I have in like that, in that deep water.
Yep.
And I guess what I've learned from jiu-jitsu is when you're in that deep water, the mats show you who you are. And it's the same thing in self-reflecting. It's like, I don't want to know you. And that's why getting into an incredible relationship and marriage, it's actually the person accepting the worst of you, which is the most important part. And it's like, can you accept who you are in those worst moments? You know, because your partner will always want the best for you, but it's, are you willing to accept those parts of you that aren't the best at that time? And I think that's what initiation and self-reflection has shown me. And I think we can get really, really tied up into the ability of like over-traumatizing and over-therapizing. Is that right?
It is. I understood it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's my lisp. Yeah, I think, and just not taking yourself so seriously. I got tied up massively into that breath working and a few other things, and was just always analysing my emotions.
Dude, 100%.
And it's a shout out to the men that listen to this, is just be very mindful that as a man we're programmed to do hard shit often, and no one cares about your emotions. And be really careful that, like, have a really tight, I'm super blessed and lucky that I've got some really, really tight friends and brothers, I call them, that it doesn't matter, you know, if something went wrong, I'd have to text or ring and it would be no questions asked. And I think that's really, really important. And as the older I get, I realise that you know, I've got such a huge network, but it's super tight in respect as well. And I'm blessed in that way. And that's how I want to keep showing up, is, you know, self-reflecting often. And, you know, if there's confrontation, you know, look at what 100% my responsibility is in that moment. And sometimes we can, you know, blame others for our, you know, where we are in our life. But I think the initiation process and being part of this project is showing me that being really resourceful is really important as a man. And I feel like a lot of issues in relationship start with the lack of resources that a man has. And I know the difference in my relationship now is being resourceful is just so impactful.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's everything that you said then. I was like, tick, I hope people are writing this down, because there are so many men that are struggling. And I think the data is like 73% of men won't put their hand up to ask for help. So for me, when I look at a rite of passage, it's like especially if you look at Indigenous cultures, it's like you go out, you've got a job to do, and you're going to come back to be able to add more value to the community again. And that's what it should be in life. You know, we go to university or get a trade, but we don't have that same mindset of I need to come back to add more value to the community. And that's not just in a monetary value, it's emotionally, it's physically, you know, to protect and provide. And your situations, I think you would probably say with jiu-jitsu, knowing that you could handle yourself, even if a 17-year-old chokes you out, you could probably choke a couple of other people out, that there's a sense of self-esteem and confidence that comes along with that.
Totally.
And so for me, it goes back to doing those hard things, because if you seek out controlled adversity, like being on the mats with someone or running your first 5K, whatever it looks like for the individual, you go through that whole process of I'm excited to do something new, I'm going off to this new experience. Then the reality kicks in. The reality is like, shit, this is hard work. It may not go to plan. I have to learn to be resourceful. I have to learn to solve problems, and I have to persevere. And then at the end, you get your reward. But you realize the reward wasn't what you were craving. It was the process. Yeah. And then you go again. And that's this thing that a lot of people don't ever snap out of. And that's why I was so fascinated that you had those experiences from I guess, your rite of passage to the Vipassana to then go into Tassie, and you left behind your career and just flipped it. There's a lot of people who have little pushes in the back, but they don't change anything. Then they wake up in their 60s going, man, my life has passed me by. I wish I could have a redo. And the thing that has stood out this whole conversation is the time and space. Anyone listening who, if you're sitting there and you don't feel that fulfillment that maybe you hear in Brad's voice or in my voice, give yourself time. Book, if you're in a position, book 1 or 2, 3 days away, or go to a Vipassana and experience that. You're going to have some very uncomfortable thoughts. It's going to be crazy. You're going to feel unproductive, but it could transform your life. And I hope people take that away from this conversation, and we could talk for bloody hours. But what I'd love to quickly dive into before we wrap it up is more about Manna. Like, can you give people a bit of a rundown of the product and Black Friday sales? No, this won't be out by Black Friday sales, but like how it works, where people can find it and everything like that.
Yeah, well, we've basically created what we like to call the bridge between, the true science and, modern day science, which is a lot empirical, data driven. Manna, in essence, is a mineral-based product with all your 90 nutrients that science recognises, and we've built that off a 10-year journey, and then we put it in this incredible packaging that's a single serve. So basically, we're saying that all your minerals, your mineral complex is done in one sachet. So like
easy,
3.6, and it's super easy, right? And it's a subscription-based business, and it does really, really well.
I love subscription-based businesses.
Yeah, it's the secret sauce, and we're super blessed with that. And I feel like we've got 4 products in the market, and we've sourced these products from the highest places on the earth, like the Himalayas, which is the fulvic acid, and we can go into another podcast specifically about the product. But it's giving your body all of the electrical charge it needs, and we call it the body electric, right? We see the body as an electrical system. So, and the cellular health is like a positive charge and negative charge, but it's really important for your DNA to have like that negative charge to get through the cell membrane to actually, to actually change the DNA, and that we've penned a term called like genetic liberation.
Okay.
And so genetic liberation, it's about, the genetics of the human body to be liberated, to be in this cycle of what we've called like the golden age. Trumpy talks about it, right? America's about to go into this golden age, and there's so much light coming into the planet. It's almost like those light codes are full of neutrons.
Yep.
And it's just so perfect for the time that we're in. And it's like there's a villain in there as well. And every marketing story has a great villain. It's like the lack of nutrients in the soil, right?
Massive one.
Monocropped soils, and that's what we've found, that the human vessel just needs so much minerals, and it's actually not the fats and proteins and the macro minerals. It's more the trace minerals that we need as well.
So where can people buy it? And the reason when I said I love subscription businesses, one part of my business is subscription. From a business model, I enjoy it, but also as a consumer, I like the fact that when I find something I like, I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
Because less decisions I have to make, I can use that energy on big decisions.
Yeah.
So if I find something I like, subscribe, it comes every month or however it works.
Yeah, MannaVitality.com. Everyone can just go there. We ship to Australia from the US.
That's so crazy considering you live in Australia.
Yeah, we cop a little bit about that, but it's just the US market is like 98% of our business.
Yeah, fair enough.
So we'll be changing that eventually. Not in the short term, but definitely something we want to support our loyal customers here in Australia and people that have followed us along the journey. And we've got some super loyal people that have just, stayed with the journey. We've got gold nanoparticles in one of our products now, which is something else we can go into on another podcast. But yeah, that's sort of the cutting edge of, getting past the blood-brain barrier and all that sort of stuff as well too. So we've got some really cool things to talk about, but I feel like this one's more about almost like the rites of passage and the founding story of what we're about.
I loved it. I've really enjoyed it, man. And it's been so cool to get to spend more time with you in person as well, because we do message a bit. But Brad McDonald, everyone, I highly recommend following this guy purely because you've inspired me to get back into what's really important in business. I wouldn't say I've lost my way, but I've lost my focus. I feel like you get to a position where you're comfortable, and you said we're really not here to just be comfortable. We're always pushing to do hard shit, and that's what you've reminded me of. And part of the fun in that is going back to championing other people. I definitely found myself looking at people as competition, which makes it waking up every day and doing work a bit more challenging than when you're like, fuck it, let's just ride this wave together with people. So I've really enjoyed that. Make sure you go check out the product and the supplement, but also I'll link a couple more episodes that you've done because I've listened to a number of them and I find them fascinating, probably similar to podcasts that you've spoken on or you've listened to. Like, there's so much information out there, and I believe that we're living in this beautiful time where so many people aren't aware of the solutions out there for their problems, that if you can get on a potty and just hear things, that it's going to change your life. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, brother.
And if you guys got value from the episode, make sure you share it, like it, subscribe it on all the platforms, do those things. And as always, my name is Lachlan Stuart. Do something today to be better for tomorrow.